Hello, everybody. It's Andy Mack here. After some time, I think it's about a year, perhaps even a bit more, bringing you an update. I've been away a long time, and you may remember I had a couple of projects running. One was a late 17th century project concerning Scotland and the rebellion there in 1685. Now, I hit a bit of a wall with it, to be honest. I have been painting quite two-thirds of the Jacobean army, so obviously the royalists have been painted, or certainly about half to two-thirds. And I've been painting some of the Highland Scots, but in 15mm, I've hit a bit of a wall. A lot of the figures are either from irregular or Essex. The Essex figures are a little bit out of period. They're a little bit later in the 45. But I'm finding the scale creep. Essex and irregular do actually fairly reasonably way up, but the other makes are few and far between. I've just sort of come off the boil with it, really. That's where, obviously, during the course of last year, came off the boil with it, and I've lost a little bit of momentum to do it. So it's been shelved for the moment, as often projects are, and my motivation for painting has decreased. I'm trying to revive it now. So and part of it also, my eyesight has deteriorated slightly. So what I was using previously wasn't very good. My glasses kept on falling off when I was painting. So I've invested in some of these head pieces. So and it's much better. So hopefully that will drive me on. But I have actually started another project, which is probably better for my situation at the moment. Obviously, another concern I have is that I have what were children who would go to sleep, leaving me the freedom in the evening to enjoy the living space for wargaming, painting, etc. Now my children are adults and still living at home and taking up that living space in the evening quite often. So I have to be mindful of that, and obviously having the peace and quiet to get on with the project and be focused hasn't been there very much. So but it's just been a motivational thing, really. So I have came off the board. I have been following a lot of the YouTube channels, and I have to say I'm missing some of the obviously, like myself, there's been a decline, I think, in the number of amateur presentations. It more seems to be people trying to present a commercial enterprise and get money from that, which isn't what I like in the YouTube community. I prefer people being passionate about their hobby and only if there is some money in it, it isn't. I don't want to hear about it, really. I'd rather just listen and hear their hobbies, even if it's a very niche area which doesn't attract many viewers. That's if I'm interested in it, that's what I like. So anyway, that's how I do my channel. Anyway, it is very amateur and it is only about what I'm interested in. And I'm not bothered if people choose to watch it or not. So without further ado, my recent interest area has been American Civil War, and at a very small level, 2mm. I think I did mention this wargame set before, but this is a wargame set in the 80s. I think it was written on the back of this book by Paddy Griffiths, which is in reprint now, I believe. So and the reprint, I think it's got the same context, but it seems a lot thicker book now. But I think partly it may be because of the way the book's laid out, because it seems like the pictures are all much the same. I'm not sure about the written material, whether there's more of that. I'll have to check, but it does seem very much the same themes. But it's an excellent book. Even the reprint is very good. This is the original, well, the older version that I have. I don't know how many prints were made, but so obviously the covers are a little bit different. And Generalship Tactics America, So it's Battle in the Civil War, Generalship and Tactics in America, 1861 to 1865, and it's very good because it does break down regimental brigade tactics in a very kind of readable way for a wargamer, really. And there's some nice art, some excellent artwork in there as well to set the mood, great mood music. And these rules are built on the back of, were designed on the back of that. It's designed for 2mm or 6mm. Now, interestingly, I've not played them, and they are quite different from your average, because it is very much in terms of how you orchestrate your army in terms of timing, and a lot of the rules are set around what time you see an incident happening, how long it takes you to change orders over a distance period of time, obviously the command structures, and the time it takes for orders to be received, and so it does. I think it may make for quite a good game. Now, one of the hardest parts of no on the back of that, so for some time I was looking on eBay and online to see if I could find companies that, or an opportunity to buy 2mm or 6mm war games, and I very nearly bought some 6mm. Is it Bacchus, I believe? I nearly bought 6mm Bacchus American Civil War. But what I actually want is the really zoomed out type of war game, where it is a very much a strategical battle. And I've watched some of the 6mm battle presentations by Little Wars and a few other people on YouTube, and much that they are very good. It's still a little bit zoomed in, and obviously I just what I want to do is try and have the sort of the strategic, not well, it's the tactical, but certainly the armies having a lot of ground to cover, and that's sort of the way, very much in the way these rules I think are designed, to have it so that you have, if you are bringing in a flank attack, then it is about covering a number of miles or whatever to get your troops in. And so what I plan to do is Second Bull Run, where Porter's Union army was held in place by Jackson, with the belief that Jackson was trying to withdraw his wing of the army away, but in actual fact Jackson seemed to be holding Porter in position so that Longstreet could do a very celebrated now flank attack. I think it was initially Longstreet was going to commit some sort of diversion but in actual fact, seeing the opportunity, changed his diversion into a whole-scale flank attack, and it was quite a skill for Porter to actually save his army from complete destruction, despite having the numerical advantage. So it was a very interesting battle. Unfortunately, the actual battlefield is still quite. It is quite. It's not developed or anything, but it's been left to for nature to take its course. So it is quite hard when you're watching the battlefield walks on YouTube, and obviously the Battlefield Association. Sorry, the Battlefield Trust, is it? I think the organisation that are very interested in preserving the American Civil War battlefields. And other battlefields in America, I believe. The Battlefield Trust, I think it is, or American Battlefield Trust. They are trying to buy parts of the battlefield to preserve them, but also so what you have at Second Bull Run, there's a lot more tree cover than there previous was, and what were, I think, rolling, fairly fertile and farmed fields aren't quite such that now. So you don't get quite the panorama that the soldiers may have had at the time in terms of viewing and the landscape of the battlefield. And so when you do look on things like Google Maps and on battlefield walks, it is a little bit more difficult than perhaps Gettysburg to get a perspective of actually how the battlefield lay of the land was. So what I plan to do is now the thoughts on how do I represent the battle, because this book is 22 centimeters to the mile. So that doesn't take for a very large battlefield board, which again suits me very much. So I bought these boards here, which are some sort of insulated DIY. I bought it from a a builder's merchant type shop, and I think they're for sort of insulation purposes. I'm not as wholly sure what they're for, but I'm going to use them for my Butterfield boards. Now, 22 centimeters a mile. When I printed off, I've been looking for a online map of second bull run, and the only, with a scale that I can then transfer onto these boards. So this is the only one I managed to get and print off, which shows here. So that is a mile on this map. So it's approximately 4 to 5 miles, probably by about 6 miles. The actual battlefield area that need be considered. So that's what I plan to do. Now, the other thing is, what do I use? I mean, commonly people use the polystyrene foam to contour the battlefields, and it's certainly that they do very, very good. However, I think I might try and do it a bit cheaper, and what I may try and do is actually do it out of papier mâché. I've never really done papier mâché, not for many years anyway. But I have watched some train. I'm also a little bit interested in train modelling, and some of their effects they make with papier mâché seem to be quite transferable onto a small scale wargaming, in terms of hills, contours, and most importantly cost. What I think I might be able to do is just use cardboard taped down with tape, the decorating masking tape, and then papier mâché over that, and then obviously then you just put the trees and things on top. I think the biggest cost I'm thinking probably will be the trees and how to get the trees looking effective. Now, woodland scenics, a lot of people use that for the small scale wall game, which I probably will use, but that obviously with the amount of trees that I probably will need, or tree coverage, will mount up the costs a little bit, which isn't a problem. But obviously the idea of doing this is to try and do something quite I say impressive, but quite decent, at a low budget. So that's my task. So what I will plan to do is obviously transfer this into a grid system, and then hopefully chalk onto these boards, that grid, and then chalk in the contours. Then use cardboard paper, which I'll stick down with masking tape probably, to start building the layers of contours. You've got Stony Ridge. So in terms of the map, you've got Jackson and Sepulveda will fought his defensive line along Stony Ridge, and to his fore was the unfinished railway cutting, which in places was quite a defensive position, and other places less so. But and I think there was other things in front. There was some fencing, I believe, and there was some maps, some quite accurate maps done of Second Bull Run, which I haven't been able to find a means to download appropriately from the internet, or with a view to printing it and using but it has actually, it's scoped down to what fields were in pasture during, I think those ones were, this map was done during the first Bull Run campaign, but it does also include this battlefield area, and it shows what fields were in, what type of fields were in pasture, so wheat and corn, etc. And it also shows where fenced lines were, which obviously can be quite an obstacle to anyone attacking. And from the look of it, it did look like Stony Ridge, the area between Stony Ridge and the cutting, which is where Jackson had his line. There was some of this sort of trellis fencing as well. So it probably was quite a decent defensive position. There's been a lot of talk around it, obviously how effective a position it was, whether or whether not, and there's a lot of debate on that, whether it was a sensible position for Jackson to take up. But anyway, he was very effective in pinning Porter in position, and deceiving him to think that Jackson was withdrawing. So Porter went into a sort of all-out offensive, and little did he know that Longstreet had actually done a circular march round to his flank and then attacked straight into his flank, and there was quite a defensive struggle for the Unions to hold back the Confederate advance, and as I say, they did actually manage to get away a lot of their army reasonably, but it was quite a defeat for the Union, and obviously the Union morale at that time, which was 1862, so quite early in the war. So yeah, that's what I plan to do. And now I say I got my opportunity to go with this because I was very lucky to get a job lot on eBay for now. I say the 2mm armies, as you can imagine, are quite cheap when you're buying. But obviously, I had the opportunity to buy them in bulk. Now I can't remember how much this actually was, but I did think it was good value for money. But I got a great big box of 2mm. Sorry, I just put my, sorry, I got a great big box of 2mm stuff, and which I hope to use. The other thinking was how do I base the brigades? But these rules here have I think it's up to approximately 10 blocks. They tend to do the rules and regiments in blocks. So as you can see there, you'd have 10 blocks there would represent one type of brigade. It's all done in brigades, and the blocks are representative of that. And different size brigades obviously have different numbers of blocks. But what I have found is sometimes with 2mm, if you have too big a bases, obviously the actual regimental footprint looks a bit odd, and it takes away that kind of effect. So at the moment, I'm trying to work it so I keep the bases sizes quite small, which brings other challenges in terms of stability of the unit, falling over and falling onto the side. So there's a lot to think through. But I do hope to try and get it so it looks quite good. And I'll say the word realistic, if a war game can ever be realistic. But yeah, so certainly in terms of a grand scale tactical, strategic tactical battle tactical battle with strategic elements as well. That would be quite enjoyable. But as I said, there are some challenges, particularly the basing, and it's more the point where do I block them all up as I don't think I'll do them as individuals. What I'll probably do them is base them as either in line or in column, and then obviously try and so that you can have the stability from the units being in a base together with other so two blocks, for instance. So you'd have perhaps that would be I do a very thin small base size for that, but that would be part of the unit in line. Whereas if I was doing it in column, I might, well, there's some horses here that are already kindly put into a column-ish type thing, but I would mount them, in closer formation, and that would represent column. And obviously at this scale, although you paint them up, you can probably chop and change what regiments they are, so there doesn't need to be that sort of very localized colouring, what colours their flags and things like that. You can just do it quite generically. So that's the idea, that I have a sort of an army which can be morphed to whatever the engagement is, whether it's a firefight or a brigade advancing in column, or in column of march even. So and then I just sort of swap the blocks about to represent that. So yeah, so that's what I hope to do. And there was also on the back of these rules, back in the 90s, I actually bought this set of rules called Little Eagles, and interestingly, there are some parallels. These are again designed for sort of 6mm, 2mm, and again they work in blocks, but they just have each battalion is based on a block of 2 units. So you'd have a column of march, column of attack, column of march, column of attack, so it'd just be 2 blocks, would be the battalion in line and then in square. And the way they do their morale is more along the Fire and Fury lines to some extent, whereby they I'll just bring you and what this company did, or the person writing these rules did, he brought in lots of scenarios, but you actually do a sort of, you have a chart of your regiment and you just tick it off as your casualties mount up, and with that the morale changes, which is a bit like Fire and Fury, where you get to a point of losing bases and then the morale changes to a lesser morale, and you just take so although this is it on a chart, with Fire and Fury you remove bases, and when the bases of the unit get to a certain point, say 4 bases, then the morale would swap to half morale or a different morale factor, which again, so they are very similar, but this one is Little Eagles for Independence. Again, I don't think this is in print anymore, and you possibly can keep an eye out for them online, but there were lots of scenario books for these, all the Napoleonic battles, including Borodino and such, so you can imagine some of the battle scenarios were chart after chart after chart. I mean, that's just this is a reserve artillery, so you've got all these charts to tick off each casualty or each ammo that's used. So that's Little Eagles, a definitive set of Napoleon wargame rules at army level. So it's the army level I'm interested in, and take it from there. Now, the other thing was, I did, on the back of the project that I was interested in, just on one other thing, sorry, about the second ball run, is this book here, Fire and Fury Battlefield Scenarios, actually cover a scenario for second ball run, and what's helpful of it, they do actually have all the timings when each unit's arrived and things, so that might be interesting for a set of rules that is very dependent on the timing of things. Then I'll be interested to have a look and perhaps transfer some of the suggestions from this scenario for second ball run in the excellent Fire and Fury Great Eastern Battle scenario book. So yeah, just slightly jumping from project to my stalled project, I thought I'd just give you a quick look at this One King. This is by Stephen Carter, who interestingly I used to know his wife years ago, and they're nice people. I think they're now living in France. They were, but yeah, he's written this book, One King: A Guide to Wargaming Argyll's Monmouth Rebellion of 1685. He's got a website whereby you can also have an online map of it, but it is actually a great wargaming source. It's got everything from color codes for the army colors and hat edges and boot colors, coat colors, lining and turnbacks and so on. It's got some great plates. I'm not going to over analyze it, because I say it's something that we've got some maps. It's got, and what interestingly, it's got lots of what if scenarios. So it gives you extra battles that could have occurred in the opinion of Stephen, or add an element of fantasy to it. Some of it. Now I haven't. Interestingly, I got these rules. This book, which does have some wargame rules in there. But it's I got it not long after I lost my motivation, actually, so I haven't read it recently. I did skim through it when I first got it, but it is an excellent book, and it's got lots of maps, lots of possible scenarios. It's got a campaign system in it where you can do the actual campaign, quick play rules, and it's got quite a good map as well, both for, if you're ever doing the 45, you could use his maps as well, because it's got the West Highlands and the West Highlands, and this map is also online, so you can use it from online and print it from there if you wanted to. Whig invasion of Scotland. Then you've got the sort of more Glasgow and the areas of relevant Falkirk, Stirling. And even if you didn't actually use these maps, you could use it as a template for designing your own maps of where the noteworthy towns were for the Scottish area. And then for the West Country, you've got obviously the Bristol down to Christchurch. So obviously anything Salisbury, Bristol, any English Civil War campaign that you wanted to run, you could use this as a template, or even Wars of the Roses to some extent, because that there was a lot of activity in the Gloucester areas, just slightly north of here, but certainly if you were doing it in the fantasy where there's no reason why the battles or the campaigns, rather than going up to places like Tewkesbury, could have come down here to areas like Bath and Salisbury. And equally, then you've got the West Country, Monmouth's sort of initial landing at Lyme, and Gambit up into to where he eventually ended at Bridgewater, or near Weston-zoyland, which is near Bridgewater. But equally, Langport, Battle of Langport, so there's English Civil War potential for this part of the map as well. It isn't, it's a fairly basic map, but it's sort of, if you wanted just to trace the main points at a scale that is quite manageable, and it's got obviously a mile scale there, it would be good. So a very good resource, and it's an area which is a bit under gamed as a wargamer. Again, I think in 25mm there probably are a lot more figures. So if I had the space, perhaps I would do it in 25mm. Or 28mm, what they are these days. But it is a very good book. Now, I say I can't speak for how well it's written and things like that, because some of these books, they do have sort of spelling errors or print errors and things like that, which I don't know why that is. Possibly, is it because people aren't proofreading properly, or is it that it's put together by enthusiastic amateurs? I don't know. But certainly, as a wargaming resource, I found it excellent. Stephen Carter, interestingly, I think he's got a lot of experience of reenactment, so it's got a sort of a degree of reenactment feel to it as well, in terms of regimental drills and so forth. Tells you all about that. But yeah, I thought it was a really. I was quite surprised actually how much content there is for this book, and it's got lots of what if scenarios, both for the Scotland and Sedgemoor campaigns. Yeah, I although I have stalled in my other project for the time being, this is a very good resource if you wanted to be inspired to run that sort of campaign. And I say the actual numbers of figures involved aren't that big, so it isn't as though it would be very intensive in terms of multiple units and things like that. They're all quite small scale, and many of the actions for both campaigns were little more than skirmishes. So yeah, so that's One King, Steve Carter, a guide to wargaming Argyll's and Monmouth's rebellion. Not a bad thickness in terms of thickness. And I say Hellion is by Hellion. There's a number of titles out by Hellion, as you may know, and I haven't really looked at many of the other ones, but certainly this one on this topic I thought was very good, bearing in mind it's not a very highly covered topic in wargaming terms. So that's it. Yeah, I just did I don't know if I showed you this last time, but I did also progress my my other Scots and things like that I was doing, and so one of the things was my eyesight, so I'm trying to improve some of the painting jobs, because now I've got better vision. I sound like an old man, but now I've got better vision. I don't get so frustrated looking for glasses and things like that, so hopefully in time I'll be able to bring you some good progress with figures, and I'll keep you updated on my papier-mâché. That's the thought at the moment. The other thought was possibly getting a decorator's cloth and washing that so that the weave gets a lot thinner, and then cutting it to size, or even a cheap bed sheet and then sticking that onto a with sort of PVA glue, sticking that down onto a contoured ground with cardboard, taped down cardboard. That was another thought, but I think papier-mâché it should be very cheap, and it might be quite fun to do. And I've never done it before, so it might be a real disaster. But that's the thinking at the moment. And then also you can scrap it and use the boards again for other things. So that's my current thinking. Anyway, so hope I am still here. I hope these times, which have been a bit uncertain for everyone, aren't treating people too badly. And obviously, if anyone who has become unwell or pass away, obviously my thoughts are with you and the families that are affected. So yeah, so thank you for watching, and bye for now. Andy Mac out.